there are more answers.
4 students found each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.
Stop. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Watch the Obsession live stream and chat. And everybody, let's see, let me know you can hear me. Do an audio check, Welcome, everybody. How are you doing? Hey, Gregory, how's it going? So nice to see you. Jen, Sharky, hi, how's it going? DC Primetime, what a treat. Welcome, my darling. Nice to see you. Hey, Honey Bun, how's it going? And let's see who else is here. Sirius Black, welcome. How are you doing? And Desiree, welcome. Nice to see you as well, my friend. Aw, so great to see you guys. And Sonia, hi, how are you doing, my friend? Nice to see you. So tonight we are going to be talking about the Idaho 4 case, and specifically Bryan Kohberger and the case that Idaho has against Bryan Kohberger. We're going to have guest, the tilted lawyer, Omar Serrato, who just got backstage. And I'm so sorry to Omar. My spell check keeps checking his name to make it Serrano instead of Serrato, right? But he's going to be coming on in just a minute. So I'm so excited about that, because how many times have we been talking about this case and we just get stuck on, you know, any number of things. We're like, oh man, I wish that we had a lawyer to ask that question to, right? So, and I hear he has all the answers. So that's like a really great thing. So what we're going to be focusing on tonight is talking about, you know, it's been this long, twisted kind of journey that we've seen the state and the defense go through as we watch them go through the pretrial hearings. And you know, there's been a lot going on. Remember way back when the defense filed, tried to compel Bethany Funk to testify at some kind of a pretrial hearing. And then, you know, she responded and we never even got there, because before that could happen, a grand jury was convened and Bryan Kohberger was indicted. Then the defense tried very hard to have that indictment thrown out. And ever since then, there's just been a ton of, you know, documents dropping, motions filed back and forth, and it does get very confusing. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of where we've been along that winding path, but specifically Bryan Kohberger's alibi, and sort of also the twisted journey that his alibi has taken. I was just looking at some videos to roll during this live stream, and it was 11 months ago when the defense first said, oh, yep, he does. He has an alibi. Yes, he does. And it's that he was driving around the night of the murders, like with no additional detail, right? And then as time goes on, we hear a little bit about the idea of Bryan Kohberger putting up an alibi defense through the pretrial hearings. And then finally, it was just about 3 months ago when the defense team actually solidified, if you could call it that alibi. And we'll talk about what that is in just a moment. So let me go ahead and bring up Omar, the tilted lawyer.
Hey
Omar, how's it going?
How you been?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, it's Friday evening, so that's a plus.
That is. How was your week?
It was a week. It's what I got to say about it. I don't have many good things to say about it, but it was a week.
It was a week. Yeah, I know. Things get busy, right?
Yeah.
I really liked your poker live stream.
Oh, that one. The poker live stream, it got a little crazy there at the end.
Oh, did it? I didn't catch the whole. I didn't get to catch it live. I was planning on it, but I had to watch it on replay. And I was like, that's kind of fun.
It turned into like an angry Thanksgiving with your in-laws, political discussion, people going back and forth, and you know that way. At the end of my live stream this morning, I did you know what, everybody, let's just take a little bit of a step back. Let's get some perspective, and I did the recitation of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dots. In the midst of the next 4 months, because I know it's going to get crazy out there. So before we get to all of that part, I was trying to make everybody be nice with each other at the very least.
Yeah. I always say at the end of my live streams, I always say, guys, life is hard. Please be nice to each other and be good to yourself because you deserve it. Because we forget that so often,
Yeah. Well, I already felt it in my in some of my comments. It's like I tell people I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I don't know. And then I'll get people, how could you consider voting for a convicted felon? You're supposed to be a lawyer. It's like, hey, man, hey, I just need all the information is all. Could I just be a political free agent for right now for the next 4 months and just go old school and watch the debates and see where everybody's going and see what Harris is all about? I don't know anything about that lady other than she has an annoying laugh and she wants us to be unburdened by the things that have been. That's all I know about Kamala Harris.
Unburdened.
Oh, her catchphrase.
Yeah. I know very little about her as well. Oh my gosh. That was, I think it was after, I was on your channel briefly when we were talking about the assassination attempt. It was after that, okay, that's crazy. And then I also wanted to ask you what you thought of Trump, and we're going to steer away from political, y'all, but Trump's first, public appearance, his first speech after that whole thing happened. How did that come off to you?
Well, my thoughts are, I did not listen to the entire RNC speech. That was, I heard, an hour and a half long. But I did catch the part where he was very somber in talking about the attempt itself and his personal perspective. And I mentioned on a subsequent live stream that I thought it was the most presidential I'd ever seen him because there was some humility in there. He came off as a triumphant, somber, humble person, at least in the moment. And then just a couple of days ago when he's talking about Kamala, people thought just because I got shot I was going to be nice. You know what? I'm not going to be nice. The hell with it. And he just goes on his
I know.
So that lasted for a hot second.
Right.
But I was impressed with his new, I liked it. I prefer my presidents to have a little bit of humility and grace.
For my presidents have, yes. That's exactly what I thought of him. I was watching him and I was like, oh, damn. I'm like, this is really good for him. This looks really good. Like,
if he starts presenting like that, he's going to win over guys like me that appreciate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
A measure of decorum in a divisive world. But here we are.
Totally. So, all right. So we're going to be talking about the Idaho case. And, this channel has a long history talking about the Idaho case. I don't know how much you know about it. I took a straight up break from it for a while, but we are back. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk about some of these issues with us. So go ahead.
I certainly have thoughts. I covered this case when when the affidavit came out, the probable cause affidavit, when they arrested Mr. Coberger and they had outlined the evidence of why. And I think it was back in December of 22. I went through there was like a 3D rendering of how things went down and everything. I think what you're noticing right now is that he's got a really, really good defense attorney, and she works for the public defender's office over there in Idaho, but she's done a masterful job. The thing that's frustrating about really good attorneys like that is they have a tendency to raise issues where they wouldn't normally be. I've noticed that in my own practice. And I'm noticing that in this case, there's a whole segment of individuals out there that are almost cult-like in their support that Coberger is innocent. And, but they latched onto this idea that, the law enforcement jumped to conclusions and wanted to arrest him. And just because he's this weird, geeky looking guy that has a social anxiety disorders, that we're picking on him and, absent any real evidence, despite there's like specks of DNA and sheets and all those kinds of things, and some measure of cell phone evidence and a weak alibi. And I know you're going to talk all about the alibi. Despite all of these other evidence, it's hard to beat DNA, no matter how small. I was just having a conversation the other day with somebody a distant family member. I had what do you call those family reunions? And a distant cousin of mine and I didn't know, watches my show. And then she was like, hey, what do you think about Coberger? And then she's telling me about how he like innocent and what about this and what about that? And like, yeah, what about the speck of DNA evidence? So yeah, but like you could find anybody's DNA. So, well, would they find yours there? They didn't find my DNA there. Did they find your mom's DNA there? No, they found his DNA there and nobody else's. So what do you want me to make of that? You want me to, you want to talk about the statistics and the economics of it all? I mean, let's talk about the probability that your DNA would have wound up on that sheath, specifically at the time the incident occurred, when his cell phone was off during the times that the incidents occurred. Riddle me that.
And it was found also partially beneath one of the victim's bodies and partially beneath one of the covers of the bed that the victims laid upon.
Yeah.
wasn't just tossed on top of, you know, it
wasn't random. It was purposeful DNA, no matter how insignificant. I haven't caught all of the pretrial motions because they're quite boring. And like, for example, the motion for change of venue obviously is getting denied. Give me a break. You are already, I get you're in a small town. I get that you're, you know, small jury selection size and all of that, but where else in the world are you going to go that doesn't know about the Idaho 4? It's a pretty significant nationwide interest-filled case. Where are you going to get a fairer venue than where you're at?
Right.
Which, so, you know, it's a big waste of time, but they're going through they're minding their P's and Q's, I guess. And so we'll see where they go from there.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I just, you know, the point that you're making is the point that we've made so many times on this channel. We call, and hey, listen, whatever your perspective is, you know, here in chat, we welcome everyone's perspective. We want you to express your views and ask questions and, you know, say what's on your mind, as long as you remain respectful to the victims and their family members. That's really all that we ask. You know, being a little bit logical is good too, but, you know, that's your choice. But respect is definitely a must. And, you know, that's a point that we've made time and time again. You know, how, you know, the DNA being there in that time when the phone was off at the time of the murders, underneath this, underneath other layers of evidence, just all of these various things. It's really, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, it's all circumstantial. Well, it is a shitload of circumstantial evidence if that is the case. I mean, it's,
yeah, but it's not all circumstantial. You know, it's I mean, they got actual real evidence in this case, and so there's a lot to overcome. Look, I get. I'm puzzled by the whole cult of Coberger is innocent. Like, I mean, it's been a long time since the incidents. It's been over a year at this point. And I've seen a lot of fake evidence out there on the internet. There's this lady that's like made her whole channel. Well, not like, I mean, not like your channel. Your channel arose. I know how it arose, but her, like her content for like the last year, has been these conspiracy theories about who was the real killer, and she's like pointed to the surveillance and basically every single individual that was in those food trucks and the surveillance that is being possible culprits, these other weird people that are just, you know, these anonymous folks trying to stir up conspiracy theories that point to anybody other than Coberger. I just don't get it. I've even seen fake surveillance like purporting to be like cries while the incident was occurring from the victims. And for a long time, I thought, is this a real thing? It doesn't appear to be a real thing. It's like people are making shit up, and I don't understand it.
I know, it is really crazy. It is really crazy. So let's take so I have a couple things lined up here. So, you know, kind of getting up to where we are today with, you know, the alibi that is being put out there, and there's a couple of pretrial hearing interactions that I want to run by you because I would love to get your opinion on it. You're a defense attorney, right?
Well, among other things, but
among other things. Okay.
In the criminal arena, I practice on the defense side.
Okay. So that'll be great. I can't wait to get your opinion on that. So let's start back a little bit at, you know, kind of the beginning, because ultimately what's going to happen is this, you know, alibi that Bryan Kohberger apparently is putting forth. It's slightly more detailed than I was just driving around aimlessly at the time of the murders, but not at 1122 King Road. You know, it's ultimately, it seems like what they're trying to do is to say that this excludes some of that surveillance video of the white Hyundai Elantra from possibly being his, meaning it's someone else's, meaning you haven't put your case together. He's innocent. So, is that how you take it, or haven't you really gotten there?
I don't think that's much of an argument, because either his alibi is weak. And those are issues for the trier of fact, which is a jury. So that's something that he might be able to present to a jury, his defense team. That, oh no, he was wandering around the mountains contemplating life and, you know, having an existential crisis. Yeah, I know. He's really fond of the meteorites. What am I talking about? The meteors, the falling stars. You know, like stargaze, man, and turns his cell phone off while he's doing it, which is completely the opposite of what you do. If you're into astronomy, there's like apps that you download on your phone, which is a trip. They track your GPS, and then like you could see where all the constellations are. With my daughters, I show them, oh look, there's Jupiter right there. Then I'll show them the little diagram on the phone. But yeah, this idea that he was somehow wandering amongst the stars. There's not any evidence to suggest that. And even in the motion to present his alibi defense, which is he has to present that, otherwise he's not going to be able to do it at trial.
Right.
He didn't list any eyewitnesses. He just simply stated that no. I was wandering amongst the stars, but there's not an explanation for why his cell phone was off.
Well, that's what I was saying in the last video that I made about this. An alibi usually states where you were at what time and who saw you. So he's got where he was, sort of like a relative, not really time, and ain't no one seen him out there. So it really is not a complete alibi.
But let me ask you, Kelly, then I present to you as his defense team. Oh, no, he was not there. You see, he was wandering the stars as part of his usual practice because he's a hiker, he's a runner, he's a stargazer. Fine. And then the prosecution presents to you evidence that, wait a minute, there's a white Hyundai Elantra that appears to be the same vehicle that's registered to his name, the exact make and model at the time where the incident occurs, where he is suspected to have been, where we recovered DNA. So you have to pick one of those two theories. Which one are you going to pick if you're on the jury?
The latter.
Which is why it's a trialable issue. And so
right.
He filed this motion because he wants to be able to use some kind of a defense at trial. So fine. But when you really break down the nuts and bolts of it, there's just not a whole lot of meat on the bone.
There's not.
So it's a failed. And honestly, if I was the prosecution and that was the defense they're going with, it's like, oh, we got this, man. And they're just wadding away. But the defense is being forced to show their hand at trial, which it's hard to hide your hand. But their defense is, well, he wasn't there. There was an alibi, and that's the defense they're going to go for. So that means they're going to have to overcome, why was his cell phone off? Why is there no other eyewitnesses? Why is it that your specific make and model of vehicle was seen there on surveillance? Why was your DNA there? Right. Along with all of these other things that are going to be presented. And it's going to be a tough hill to overcome for the defense.
Yeah, no doubt. Huh. Here. All right, so let me bring this first thing I want to bring into the stream here. This is good. Vinny Politano cracks me up. I just got a glimpse of him. Let's see. Bryan Kohberger's driving route. Is that the one we want? Yeah, let's do it. No, here, let's listen to Vinny first. Okay, so here, the context of this video clip that we're about to watch was a video that I made. This was 10 months ago, and it's called Bryan Kohberger. It's digital and surveillance footage enough without DNA. Because at the time, that was a big issue because they were talking about whether or not the DNA evidence was even going to be admissible in trial, was going to be thrown out because it was obtained through that IgG, that genetic genealogy.
Yeah, 23andMe or whatever it was.
Right. And so, people were saying, oh, it's going to be thrown out. And then the case is going to be thrown out. And I'm a Coberger and he's, innocent. But, the question that we were asking is, was there enough evidence without the DNA, just with the surveillance and then, the digital forensics?
Well, if you take out the DNA, which obviously is going to be crucial evidence, the defense obviously wants to get that out. Then what do you have? You have Bryan Kohberger, who is the only person in existence within a 100-mile radius of where the incidents occurred, who specifically had his cell phone off at the specific time where the incidents were known to have occurred. You have his vehicle being seen outside of the residence, driving up and down the road or whenever it was. You have his suspicious activity, his behavioral profile. You're going to have other stuff. Other minor stuff is going to come in. You're going to see stuff about how he had these awkward relationships with people. You're going to see, his history. He earned an associate's degree in psychology from Northampton Community College in 2018. He got his bachelor's from DeSales in 2020. Attends grad school. At the time of his arrest, he was a PhD criminology student teaching at Washington State University, about 15 minutes from Moscow. He finished his first semester. He's working as a security guard in 2021. He had an apartment about 10 miles from the place. They're going to, I'm assuming, talk about his psychological profile, where there was incidents at a brewery in Pennsylvania between him and women. They're going to describe his aggressive flirting with a couple of female bartenders that came out. There's going to talk about how he was this smart guy that had trouble fitting in. He was highly intellectual, described as genius by people that knew him. They're going to talk about how he wanted to understand that he wanted people to understand that he was smarter than them, and that therefore describe things in an overly complex matter to be condescending, quite frankly.
Yeah.
They're going to talk about how he was bullied and became very socially awkward, mostly by girls when he was growing up, how he had this aggressive behavior. They're going to talk about all of those things. And then leading up to the moment where on a night in 2022, he decided to execute his plan. He did execute his plan. How do we know it was him without the DNA? Because his car, because the cell phone stuff, because of the pings. They're going to have to bring all of that in. I'll tell you what, if the defense is able to do away with the DNA and the cell phone pings,
that would be significant.
That's going to be a really difficult case to prove at that point.
Yeah.
But to the extent that one or both of those things are going in, I think that they got enough to win this case.
Yeah, I think so too. So here, let's watch a little of this and just get everyone on the same page. Take a look at exactly what they do have as far as the digital evidence and the surveillance footage evidence, and then we'll go from there. Sound good? Awesome. Ooh, did I bring that in? It's the StreamYard 3-ring circus.
Do y'all remember this? On January 3rd, 2023, TMZ obtained and released body cam footage from an officer in Indiana who pulled over Bryan Kohberger and his father. The date of this traffic stop was December 15th, 2022. This was while Bryan Kohberger and his father were driving from Washington State back to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Now, we need to remember that law enforcement issued a BOLO, a be on the lookout for the white Hyundai Elantra that was issued on December 7th, 2022. So that's 8 days before this traffic stop. And law enforcement was on the lookout for this white Hyundai Elantra even before the public was. During the course of that discussion and that traffic stop, and through information that we learned after this footage was released, we found out that Bryan Kohberger was pulled over not once, but twice in Indiana. Those police stops were just minutes apart from one another.
This was one of the first indications to the public that law enforcement just might be playing a game of cat and mouse with Bryan Kohberger, that they might already be onto him as the suspect of the horrific murders of Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen in the University of Idaho that happened on November 3rd, 2022.
Watching and waiting for the right moment to nab an alleged killer. For several days, reports say an FBI surveillance team followed Bryan Kohberger as he was traveling 2,500 miles across the country to his parents' home in Pennsylvania. And during that time, they knew who their suspect was. They just couldn't move in on him right away. But were they really just watching him, or was there more to it? Were they collecting evidence as he was traveling the country? Were they watching his patterns of behavior to plan their takedown?
So when we're asking the question, could Bryan Kohberger have been arrested if it weren't for the DNA evidence? As many of y'all know, the DNA evidence has been a point of controversy for many people, and it certainly has for his defense attorney, Ann Taylor, and his defense team, as they have been asking for more and more details regarding how the state and the investigators arrived at a place where they found Bryan Kohberger's father is being a matching relative linked to the DNA that was found on the knife sheath at 1122 King Road. As I think Ann Taylor wants it to be, there are a lot of hints in the defense's motions and court filings as we read through them. Since they can't really say anything to the public as a PR statement for their client, I think that they leak information, so to speak, in that regard. We know from one of their filings that they were looking into the certification and training record of one of the FBI CAS team members who was investigating this case.
Says request 109, identity of FBI special agent that is a member of the cellular analysis survey team that was consulted with to determine
locations of the cell phone from 11/12 and 11/13, and all cast certification records and training records for the involved agents. So one of the questions this leaves me asking is, when exactly was that cast team member and other investigators looking into Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and where it was at certain dates and times? Was it before his arrest or after his arrest? Although you might think you know the answer to that question if they were looking into his cell phone records before or after his arrest, based on the probable cause affidavit and everything that we know on an official level, the answer to that question is not clear. If we knew the answer to that question, we would have a better idea of how much they were on to Bryan Kohberger before they got the results of the investigative genetic DNA testing. Were they hot on the trail or were they cold? So again, what we know from that defense motion that was filed is that the cast FBI team was looking into Bryan Kohberger's whereabouts using his phone records on November 12th and November 13th. Of course they would. Those are the pertinent dates for a crime that happened on November 13th. They want the identity of FBI special agent that is a member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or CAST, that was consulted with to determine locations of the cell phone from 11/12 and 11/13, and then all of those certification records. So what we do know based on this statement is that the FBI did use that CAST technology and methodology on the 12th and the 13th to determine the precise location of Bryan Kohberger's phone. What do you know about CAST technology?
About triangulating cellular signals. Am I muted?
Yeah. Well, specifically FBI CAST. Are you familiar at all, or?
Oh no, I'm not too familiar with this. Tell me about it.
It's like, well, I think I'm gonna explain it here a little bit in the video. I don't know if you knew about it at all, but it's like it's a certain methodology. It's a certain team of people in the FBI that can basically access anything that is going to pinpoint you in a location using your device in the world by any means whatsoever. I mean, the point of this is if they are using CAST technology, like, dude is screwed, like that. I mean, that's usually how it goes. Here, let me keep playing this. I'll explain it a little more.
All right.
So why don't you just go ahead and put a mental bookmark right there, because we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
Now next, in the probable cause affidavit, Officer Payne talks about how they looked for cell phones that were in the area of coverage near the King Road residence between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on the morning of November 13th. And his known phone number, the phone number that they knew to belong to Bryan Kohberger at that time, did not show up in that area. So there's something very important in that part of the PCA that has often been overlooked, and that is that we can tell by the description there, the method that they used was a tower dump. And what we're looking at right here is a page out of the FBI CAST Field Manual Training Guide from 2018. It says, tower dumps are helpful when specific cell phone numbers have not been identified. However, they can be expensive. Cell phone providers only preserve CDR records for a limited time, yet tower dumps are retained longer. Tower dumps can provide a wealth of information regarding which phones were in a specific place and time. The legal threshold is you need a court order or search warrant to conduct a tower dump. And when you're looking at a specific crime, which is certainly the case here, they're looking at the quadruple homicides of the 4 Idaho students. It says for specific crimes, it determines phones in use in the area. And then the bullets down here talk about how the tower dump is helpful. If you're looking at a specific crime, it says preserves data in case a future suspect develops, and narrows a suspect pool based on knowledge. For example, outgoing call, only 3-minute conversation, not in the area after the crime, etc. From that section of the probable cause affidavit that I just read, we know that this cell phone tower dump method was the first method that was used as they were trying to narrow down the suspect pool, which makes total sense. So the probable cause affidavit then goes on to say, hey, that's no problem. We know that criminals will often leave the phone behind or turn a phone off or put it in airplane mode to try to elude law enforcement. Officer Payne then goes on to say that pursuant to a search warrant from December 23rd, he was able to identify Bryan Kohberger's phone number, traced back to the origin of Albertsville, Pennsylvania, and the account was open in June of 2022. These records also include historical cell location information, also known as CSLI, for that phone number. After receiving this information, I consulted with an FBI special agent that is certified as a member of the CAST team.
Okay, here's CAST, Cellular Analysis Survey Team.
Members of CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to being certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. Additionally, the FBI CAST special agent that I consulted with has over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From the information provided by CAST, I was able to determine estimated locations for Coberger's number from November 12th to November 13th, the time period authorized by the court. And that was, just at that time, the time upon which they were trying to obtain the probable cause warrant. The interesting thing here is that Brett Payne in the probable cause affidavit said that he was able to find X information based on a search warrant that was granted on December 23rd, 2022. However, we as a public do not know the contents of that December 23rd search warrant that was granted to authorities at that time. Now, we do know that it was not until December 27th did law enforcement go through the Coberger family home garbage and find the samples that contained Bryan Kohberger's father's DNA. They quickly sent them back to their labs across the country, got the results, and that is what prompted the arrest warrant. At least that's my understanding of what prompted the arrest warrant based on everything that we know. So the interesting question and the key question here is that if it were not for the DNA sample and the investigative genetic genealogy hit that led authorities to Bryan Kohberger's father, would they still be able to arrest Bryan Kohberger? Remember, Brett Payne says in the probable cause affidavit that they were able to find out all of these things about Bryan Kohberger's whereabouts and his behavior based on his cell phone from a search warrant that was dated December 23rd, 2022, 4 days before law enforcement went through the Coberger family home garbage, and then a couple days later found that it was a match, and on December 30th, my birthday, arrested Bryan Kohberger. And I truly believe, my friends, based on what we know right now, because of that broad and strict gag order, that is all we know. And that as far as we can go in extending our logic to determine what evidence exactly prompted Bryan Kohberger's arrest and the order in which all of this evidence was discovered, obtained, processed, and then, put forth towards the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. So what do you think? Could Bryan Kohberger, please leave a comment below.
We left off.
Get this individual for some time waiting. I hope he stops and grabs a coat somewhere.
Nothing there, but that's okay. So that's, just basically a summary of all the evidence that exists, or
Right.
well, that did exist as we knew it. We were able to explain at the time, even without the DNA evidence.
So my thoughts on that is I've been confused as to why the prosecution has withheld or just hasn't just dumped all of the cell phone evidence on the defense team, because I know that much of their objections has been that the prosecution is withholding some of the cell phone evidence. They admitted that, or they stated in the probable cause affidavit that they were using that in part to gain the arrest warrant to arrest him.
Right.
And so, but you're suggesting having spoken with an FBI person, that not only do they have these cell phone tower pings, but it goes deeper than that. They got historical records for his phone from AT&T.
Yes.
From the time the account was opened in June of 2022. And then from the affidavit, after consulting with CAST, they were able to determine estimated locations for that phone from June 22 to present, which was the time period that was authorized by the court. Which, if you have are of the opinion that they are singling out this phone, which is what the affidavit suggests, I guess, and that's kind of what the struggle has been. But as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any motion granted to exclude cell phone data. I understand that they're still going through a lot of that discovery. And one of the questions I saw is, why is this trial taking so long? Part of it is because there's been extensive motions specifically dealing with discovery and evidence. And when you have a case that's like this, and you have these evidentiary issues, the quickest way to a mistrial is through faulty evidence, as you've kind of seen in recent cases. And so if they don't get this portion of it right, all of this for nothing, and you got some Brady violation that causes a mistrial, such as what we just had with the Baldwin case. That's why it's taking so long, because the DA is making it take so long. Because as I recall, wasn't this trial slated for like Thanksgiving of last year or something like that?
Yeah. I think, it just keeps getting moved back further and further and further. I don't even remember what the initial trial date was supposed to be, but is it common for, homicide trials to take this long procedurally? I
have cases involving much less that are taking just as long, if not longer. And it's always for evidentiary reasons. You're prepping a case, and what's unique about criminal cases is, the guy's already sitting there in jail and he's facing a life sentence. And so what's the harm in making sure that we get all the evidence right? And so it's not like he's charged with a misdemeanor and he's unjustly sitting there in a jail cell, as I heard is often the case in New York with a lot of these low-level offenders. They'll be sitting there and the DA keeps on pushing the trial back because they're not prepared to present their case, and their public defender's like, sure, we'll agree to the continuance, ignoring that they have a right to a speedy trial. I don't have to extend time for anything, which I've never understood why that was such an epidemic, other than ineffective assistance of counsel. Is it that widespread? I don't understand why a PD just couldn't plant their flag. They've had enough time. They're either ready or they're not. Let's go, because my guy's sitting there in Rikert facility and rotting away for no reason. He hasn't been convicted of anything. I think what I've heard, being somebody who lives in New York State and has a family of attorneys in New York State, it's in part, it's something. I believe, functionally, it's something that's really terrible and isn't supposed to be part of our justice system, which is just a method of containing these kind of, fringe on the edge, could be criminals from, going out and committing more crime in neighborhoods that are already, saturated with crime and really can't take much more. So it's almost possibly intentional, which would be really wrong and terrible, but I think it may be the case. Well, it's definitely been the case in other periods of time in other jurisdictions not related to New York. I don't know to what extent it would still be the case in 2024, although I know that it's a thing because of it's a thing over here. I've literally had guys sitting waiting for trial for misdemeanors that they committed like 3 years ago, allegedly, right? And for varying reasons that I don't understand. But they are usually allowed to continue because of unavailable witnesses, because of, whatever potential Brady violations, because of specific motions that are filed by the defense. And in this case, every motion that you've seen is designed to try to adhere to due process rights of Bryan Kohberger. The motion to change venue, which is complete bullshit, by the way, but the motion to change venue, it's having the effect of extending this out further than it needs to be, because they're not going to have a fair. Okay, you want to change the county to where exactly? That's going to be so different from here. And, well, isn't the effect, I've said all along with this case, and I know this happens in other cases, but to me,
it's been really pronounced in this case that sometimes the effect or the intention of some of these motions, yes, hopefully it has a legal purpose as well, but it's to, kind of in the midst, with this really broad and strict gag order, is to get information out there that they wouldn't otherwise be able to get out there, perhaps to influence a jury pool or to influence the public, because public opinion is strong. Do you think there's something to that, or not really?
100%, because think about it. When you get to trial, everything's coming in, and so
right.
The fight and the struggle that you see in the months and years leading up to a trial is what's coming in and what's staying out.
Right.
That's the heart of all of these motions. We've already highlighted a couple of pieces of evidence that are really important to securing a victory in this case.
Yeah.
And every motion has been based on, because look, if the defense can get a judge to agree that the prosecution has maliciously withheld evidence relating to cell phone tower data, even better if it's exculpatory of Bryan Kohberger, but if they can prove that they were withholding evidence, then they're not going to be allowed to bring that evidence in. And if they can't bring it in, then you have a circumstantial case. And if you have a circumstantial case, you get a certain jury in there and you got a good shot at an acquittal. So you're going to try everything.
So why would they do that? Like you said, with the Baldwin case and the Brady violation, why would the prosecution do that in the first place? It just seems so risky for what?
Well, most of the time they don't. Like most of the DAs that I know go out of their way to just drop stuff in your office because they don't want Brady violations.
Right.
Most of the time, Brady violations are not intentional. They're because somebody dropped the ball somewhere down the road. But yeah, Brady violation is the quickest way to an instant victory for the defense. And that's what happened with the Baldwin case. And so I don't think that, the prosecution team here, and I think they're good prosecutors. And I understand that the defense attorney and the prosecutor are good friends. Imagine what it's like having a drink with them at the end of the day.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, they're going at each other. There's attorneys that I'm really fond of, that I'm friends with, that I've had these heated arguments in court with myself just this past week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most of the time I win on those, but I've lost a couple of those. And then at the end of the day, you forget all about it and you're friends again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have these cases. And so, yeah, if it's a Brady violation, we're not trying to violate Brady. We're not trying to do that because of the ramifications. Imagine being the prosecutor that got Bryan Kohberger acquitted or had his case dismissed on the strength of a Brady violation. How pissed off, Jesus.
The whole world would be out to get you. I mean, yeah, that's terrible. That is a lot. That's a lot of pressure. Wow.
The Karen Reed case, the judge in that case just forgot to poll the jury. She didn't have to poll the jury, but like, couldn't you have just polled the jury? Really? They said they're all unanimous that she's not guilty on counts 1 and 2. You didn't want to just think you should inquire before announcing mistrial, dipshit, after 2 years of litigation and how many months of trial? A couple of months of trial, 60 days or whatever it was, 180 something witnesses. How frustrating must it have been to be the defense? I don't want, in that trial, I would not have wanted a mistrial. I want a freaking acquittal. And the fact that Alan Jackson had no opportunity to even object to the finding of a mistrial is I can't call it an abuse of justice, an abuse of process, but it's just negligence, perhaps, from the stage of the judiciary to have the trial of the century end in a mistrial on the strength of you forgot that maybe you should poll the jury.
So if there, if it is the mistrial because of a neglect of the judiciary, is there any sanction for?
No, I don't think that.
Once you're a judge, you're kind of.
Yeah, but the thing is, in Massachusetts, the law over there is she's not required to poll the jury. There's no law that says she has to do that. It's usually what happens because it's just good practice to do that. But in her discretion, she doesn't have to. So is up in arms as everybody is. Look, she was well within her judicial powers to declare a mistrial on the information that she knew, and there's nothing that states that she had to declare a mistrial. And there's case law, going way back that shows that she had every right to declare a mistrial absent polling of the jury, and that was that. But what the question was is, does does double jeopardy attach if it can be proven that all 12 of the jurors were unanimous in wanting to acquit Karen Reed on counts 1 and 2? And if that was the case, now what? Because we just declared mistrial. How are you going to get all them jurors back together? Are we going to have them each fill out affidavits attesting to that fact? Because that's really hard to do because they have no obligation anymore to the case. And so it's just this huge conundrum. And by the way, I've heard that the prosecution has already refiled charges, and it's going to be stalled by these new appeals that the defense team is putting forth.
Well, gosh. Well, I mean, it wasn't really, one of the biggest jeopardies of that whole situation was, starting to infringe on double jeopardy. I mean, that's something that, it's fundamental and foundational to our justice system. You cannot be tried twice. I mean,
well, Kelly, imagine, let's just imagine you were facing 3 counts of some nefarious charge, right? You go through all of this trial, all of this litigation, all this preparation, all of this anxiety and stress of 2 years of wondering whether or not you're going to maintain your freedom at the end of all of this. Come to find out, and I want you to keep this in the back of your mind, the jury 100% could have said, we find her not guilty on count 1, not guilty on count 2, and we're undecided on count 3. Declare a mistrial on count 3, but 1 and 2 goes away. If you knew that that was a thing, and then you come to find out after the fact that they were going to acquit you on counts 1 and 2, but now it doesn't count because we never got there because nobody bothered to ask where they were. Imagine how pissed off you would be.
Oh my God. I mean, I just can't even. That's crazy. It's crazy. I wonder what's going to happen. Wow. That is that is an epic trial, isn't it?
The Reed case,
yeah.
I labeled it the trial of the century just because of how salacious that case was. I mean, you had a young lady. I mean, she's like 40. How real? She was 43, 44 or something. And she gets really pissed off at her boyfriend. Allegedly runs him over in a car and sends him 33 text messages screaming and yelling at him and where is he at and doesn't know that he's dead and wakes up at 5 a.m, goes back over to the scene, and then there's this whole story of a cover-up and butt dials, and maybe she was having an affair with one of the detectives, and people not cataloging evidence, and other people collecting DNA evidence in red Solo paper cups and putting it in a plastic bag from 7-Eleven or whatever that place was. That was so far probably the trial of the century. I can't think of a bigger one in the 2000s anyway.
Yeah, that was really crazy. Well, hopefully more to come of that. Well, I mean, not for Karen Reed, but for our viewing enjoyment, I guess. Hopefully more to come. Jeez. All right, so let's take a look at. Something you said. Well, talking about why the prosecution might be withholding this, cast or the cellular evidence from the defense. Hi, Lily. I got a little bunny over here who's kind of like, okay. I got bunnies running around. It's really crazy around these parts. True crime and bunnies. I want you to take a listen. I want to listen all together to this back and forth between the state and the defense and judge in this somewhat recent pretrial hearing. I honestly don't remember what the date is. Maybe it'll be on here, but I actually wanted your opinion on this, so we're going to go just dive right into it. I think the last time I did a live stream in the Idaho case, we took a look at this, but it's going to be better with you weighing in here. Oops.
Okay.
Let's see. Lily. Got like a bunny like chewing on my ankle here. Okay. All right. Let me bring this in stream. Yep. Okay. That one. I hate when YouTube changes their format on you. You don't even know it's coming. Does that happen to you? Okay. Here we go.
Discussion beginning most recently with the state's request for scheduling order, and I believe Ms. Taylor briefly addressed it at the last hearing. There's been an ongoing discussion about the alibi deadline, and the state is asking the court to either limit the defendant to presenting evidence about the disclosure that he made related to the alibi, which was that he was driving around the night of the homicides, but not allowing any further discussion or evidence of an alibi, given the amount of time that has passed since the state requested that.
So this hearing happened clearly before the state clarified his alibi, which we haven't even talked about yet, but just this back and forth here, it's just, it's a little crazy to me.
alibi disclosure. Alternatively, since it was in the court's scheduling order initially prior to the trial getting vacated, we would ask the court to set a 10-day deadline now. I think at this point, there has been so much time that has passed, and it has frankly causes the state great alarm that the defense is discussing calling upwards of 400 witnesses during the innocence phase when we don't have, potentially don't have a full alibi disclosure. And when you look at cases regarding appeals from issues that arise during alibis that come up at trial, these cases are all defendants appealing a conviction because the state doesn't get a second chance. If the state gets ambushed at trial, that's it for us. We're asking the court to hold the defendant to a fair alibi deadline, and I think that the time has come. Thank you.
My understanding was that was it, but I may be wrong. Ms. Taylor.
No. All right, now check this out, y'all. To what Ann Taylor has to say.
Wait. How could his understanding be that was it? That the alibi was that Bryan Kohberger was driving around, I don't know where, I don't know when, and no one saw me. How could the judge have that understanding? Would that be a legitimate alibi defense? I mean, does it meet the...
That's not really what an alibi is. An alibi is some kind of credible evidence that you were someplace else, not his recitation of where he might have been. That's not the same thing as an alibi. It's his
right. So the judge just saying, "Oh, I thought that was it." That was crazy to me. Unless he was just going to let them submit that as the alibi because I mean, if this is a death penalty case, if this is truly the only way for the man to try to defend his life, maybe the judge would. I don't know. That really freaked me out.
You heard the state's attorney say something really important. Like, look, all of these appeal cases are all because, the absence of alibi, whatever. If he wants to present an alibi, I believe the procedure over there is you have to submit an alibi affidavit or something. And then the judge is saying, well, I think the judge is being careful to just let everything in because he's right. In the event that he excludes it on some kind of technicality, I mean, that's always going to be appealable and it might just extend things. Say you get a conviction. Well, now you just bought him another 20 to 25 years of fresh air because, stale air in the jail, prison, death row. Right. But, you create an appealable issue that way if you don't let in things that you might probably should have let in. So the judges are always going to err on the side of letting things in because we don't want to be the judge that, unceremoniously dismisses what would have otherwise been admissible testimony on the strength of a loophole or some kind of procedural defect.
Sure. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, let me keep playing that because what's coming next is just like, woohoo.
Stay here. I actually made a video about this. I couldn't believe it when I was watching this hearing live and I heard this being said. See if you catch the same thing I caught about a little slip up Ann Taylor made here. Now, keep in mind, this is about a full year after the motion to compel Bethany Funk's testimony
because the rest of the video was kind of about that. I was tying it in. Doesn't really matter here.
The pre-trial hearing that never happened was filed.
No. When the court vacated the trial setting, the court vacated all of the deadlines, including the alibi deadline. That wasn't carved out as one that was still held through when the court vacated the rest of its scheduling order. So I don't think that we're foreclosed from that. The court also has the ability to give an extension besides the limited time by statute. In this case, it's more than Bryan was just driving around. We have let the state and the court know that we expect that will be supported by expert testimony and by cross-examination of the state's experts. I need their full cast report and the rest of the discovery related to that before I can say more about that. So to tie me to a deadline when I don't have the rest of the discovery that I've been waiting for that would relate to that will mean that I will be back asking the court to reopen it. My expert can't finish until I get the rest of the discovery as well.
So understand what she's asking for is I need the rest of the cast report that FBI, cellular analysis team that we were just talking about. That's like, one of the best and what they do, they're going to provide the most evidence and the most information before she can submit an alibi. She needs to find out where they know he was when.
Yeah.
That was, what do you think of
Well,
that?
what she's really arguing is that she can't be beholden to any kind of a deadline with respect to the alibi when she's represented prior. That the way she's going to prove her alibi is through expert testimony, and we don't even know who all the potential experts are because we haven't had the full disclosures from the cast reports. And so until the state wants to provide us with that evidence, then the clock doesn't really start on our deadline, and this argument is stupid. It's basically what she's saying.
Thank you. My gosh, I've spent like a lot of time thinking about that, and it was all like just like that. Thank you. No, that's great for the clarification. But Judge is just a little bit goofy here, and there's still more.
The discovery you're talking about is a video of the car.
No, I am.
What do you?
So the video that we talk about is one that I think the state's going to use in its case that I don't have full video on. That I'm not talking about any video of Bryan's car. When I'm talking about an alibi defense, unless there's video that shows it elsewhere that I haven't gotten to yet, which may be possible given the fact that there's a lot I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Yikes.
Did you catch that the way I did or no?
What is the yikes moment? I'm missing. This is what
the yikes was for me. Here, wait. I'm sorry. I was reading a comment. Let's listen to it here.
Okay.
I don't have the rest of the discovery that I've been waiting for that would relate to that. Will mean that I will be back asking the court to reopen it. My expert can't finish until I get the rest of the discovery as well.
And the discovery you're talking about is a video of the car.
No, I am.
What do you?
So the video that we talk about is one that I think the state's going to use in its case that I don't have full video on. That I'm not talking about any video of Bryan's car.
Her saying, "I'm not talking about any video of Bryan's car."
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's not sounding the way that it did to me at first. Maybe it doesn't. That it sounded like a slip to me, but it's not sounding that way now. I think maybe after you explained, but you just explained, which is one of the benefits of having things explained.
I was trying to make it fit into a yikes moment. Is it the big reveal that there's like other cars that could implicate other suspects? It was just it just sounded to me like we don't have all the discovery, so how could you expect us to comply with all of these things?
I guess my yikes response was like, she's like, no, we're not talking about that, stupid judge. And it's not the video of Bryan's car. And saying it's not a video of Bryan's car, the way I was reading it was saying that there could be a video of Bryan's car because Bryan's car was there essentially.
Oh, but I thought that was not really in dispute. I feel like it's pretty well known that they got his car on video, or maybe am I remembering it wrong?
Well, I mean, they are saying that. Well, I think what the alibi is going towards is that, it's going to be. I think it's going to be indisputable that they have his car on certain surveillance footage videos, and I think that anybody could assume that. And I believe that to be true because I believe that to be true. Let's just say that that's a given. So I think that the function of the alibi is going to say, but certain surveillance video footage, in all of that, what is it, like 38 different camera perspectives that are linking it all together. That's not his car because it couldn't be, because his alibi is that he was stargazing over yonder. And if he was stargazing over yonder, his car could not be over hither, so it's not his car. So you're not making that connection. There's a hole in it. Therefore, it wasn't our guy, which is pretty weak, but that's my understanding of what they're angling for.
I mean, all it really takes is one piece of surveillance footage of a white Hyundai Elantra around the time of the incidents anywhere other than 1122 Kings Road to support that alibi. But it would have to be somewhere that made sense, where he was wandering about stargazing, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's not as many surveillance opportunities up in the wilderness and the mountains, I'd imagine. But it doesn't, so you can't tell me, you mean to tell me that you couldn't have got like him on surveillance coming and going from his place of residence 10 miles from the incident? How about that? Which I thought that they must have something like that, right? But if it's coming and going at the time where he was supposed to have come and gone, then that doesn't really help, does it? And so what they need is some piece of evidence showing that his car was not anywhere near the place of the incident. And it's physically impossible. But how are they going to tie that in if they can't identify it as his car? Because right now, everything circumstantially leads that, no, this was your car and it was right there on this surveillance. Right. And so, you know, I get what she's saying. She's missing stuff. She's trying to make her case. She's not really making any strong defense arguments. She's not making any merit-based defense arguments. She's simply arguing procedure, that if you're going to impose these deadlines on me, then I, at the very least, have to be provided with all of the evidence, because otherwise, how could I possibly, in any cogent way, formulate my alibi, my client's alibi, without knowing where I'm going to pull from the experts and all the other stuff she was saying. Video.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that for me, because I was making it far more scandalous in my mind than I think perhaps it is. You know, but then, you know, the next thing that, then we're not going to listen to it because it's a little long-winded, but the next thing that the state goes on to say is, well, you know, and I'm certainly not accusing the defense of doing this, but, you know, there is precedent that there, you know, you need to have, you know, your statement of an alibi at such a time, because, you know, it could be the case that, you know, one could manufacture their alibi based on the evidence. And I'm not saying that the defense did that, but, you know, and I appreciate that she's being very forthcoming, that she wants to see all the evidence before she states his alibi. But like, seriously, how far is this going to go? Mm-hmm. You know, just to paraphrase it, you know,
I've already got a rebuttal to that. I mean,
good, because the judge did not. He was like, I'm confused too.
Well, I mean, it's simple. She's really stating that we've already stated the alibi. You already know that we're going to say he wasn't there. He was wandering around stargazing. You know that. I haven't submitted an alibi affidavit because we're trying to pin it down to certain expert testimony that we can't identify because dipshit over here didn't provide all the discovery. That's really
right. Okay, that makes sense. Now that I'm going to just like jump a little bit here, because we're talking about, you know, having, you know, is there, you know, some footage? Hold it as I switch. I need like a little like switch screen assistant here, because I'm a terrible multitasker. Do excuse me.
That's all right. That's why I got Dominic for my live streams.
I know. I needed Dominic. All right. I think that's one right there. Yeah, I think it's it. So, you know, and speaking about, you know, pinning his car down in one place and, you know, all of that here, I just want to make a point of this part of the PCA and how it does a little more than what you just said.
Coffee shop. Right. Oh, show the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle number 1.
Just go back just a little bit here.
6 p.m. His phone number utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage. The phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway I-95. At approximately 12:36 p.m., his phone number utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe Coffee, located at 810 Port Drive in Clarkston, Washington.
Now, this time frame is, you know, after the murders occurred. Here we're at 12:36 p.m. on Sunday, November 13th, and that's obviously after the murders occurred. But what they're doing now is, you know, saying that this same white Hyundai Elantra that we're catching on the security camera footage is the same white Hyundai Elantra as was caught in the security camera footage in Moscow at 1122 King Road, right around the scene of the crime, you know, at the scene of the crime, you know, in the scene of the crime. But now we're going to tie together a little more. So if anyone's wondering why, you know, the time frame is after the murders, just wait.
Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef's store located nearby that location, the coffee shop, show the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle number 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with cellular data from Bryan Kohberger's phone number. At approximately 12:46 p.m., the 8458 phone then utilized cellular data in the area of Albertson's grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. And again, surveillance footage identified a car consistent with a white Elantra. And additionally, interior surveillance at that grocery store showed Bryan Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. And then there is a map that depicts Kohberger's possible path of travel right here and in the probable cause affidavit. So now, my friends, when you break that down, they are putting Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pinging in a certain location with video camera surveillance footage of a car consistent with his white Elantra and the man himself, Bryan Kohberger, on that interior security camera footage of the grocery store. So now we have the phone, the car, and the man all together. Just in regards to the specific set of facts we are talking about, I think that's what we call a boom, right?
The boom was in response to another channel, but yeah.
Additional,
yeah. So anyway, for what that's worth, there are places in the PCA where they describe putting all of those things together: the person, the car, an image of the person, an image of the car, an image of the person, an image of the car, an image of the person getting in the car. Those things uniting, along with his cell phone traveling with that car, that there within contains that person whose image was seen along with the car, getting in the car, and it really starts, I believe, to tie things together pretty clearly, in my opinion. What do you think?
I agree with that, and that's kind of the weakness of the defense's alibi, isn't it? Like, okay,
yeah,
so you're saying he was all these. You can't argue that he wasn't at these other places after the fact because you see him getting out of the car. So now you have to make his alibi fit that, okay, well, he was wandering the mountains, contemplating the nature of God around the time of the incident. Right. And then he came down from the mountains, and deciphered his version of the 10 Commandments and decided to go get a coffee and then went to Albertsons to buy a pumpkin.
Joe's.
And so
it really is crazy.
It's really difficult to craft an alibi. That's the prosecution's point. It's like, we're not trying to tip our hand so they can adjust their alibi on the fly. We're giving them just enough as is legally required, and the prosecution is like, I'm not submitting my alibi affidavit until I get all of this stuff. That's the cat and the mouse, and that's really the heart of the litigation, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Well, since you're mentioning this alibi, we haven't even really said what the exact alibi is. Lily, you're killing me. I've got this. Like, do we want a bunny break? Will you let me pick you up? Or are you gonna freak out? Omar, it's a bunny break.
I was gonna say it looks like a rabbit.
It's a rabbit. I told you I had bunnies hopping around. This is Lily. She's our little What's the Obsession theme bunny.
Oh, look at that. I've never owned a bunny before.
They're very fluffy, and they bunny. They don't do it. Trust me, just don't do it. They just keep bunnying. It's true. It really is true.
Jesus.
All right. So this is just like three minutes long or so. It's just talking about when Bryan Kohberger expanded his alibi, non-alibi, or his defense did, rather. You okay, honey?
Suspect's alibi. They claim he was driving in a remote area on the night of the murders and say cell phone data backs up his story. Kana Whitworth is covering the case. Good morning, Kana.
Yeah, George, good morning. So this is the first time that we're seeing how Bryan Kohberger's legal team plans to challenge the forensic evidence against him. They say they have expert testimony that will use those cell phone records to prove that he was more than 20 miles away from the crime scene in a rural area at the time of the murders.
Overnight, lawyers for Bryan Kohberger, the former PhD student accused of stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death, saying they plan to use analysis of cell phone tower data to show Kohberger was not near the crime scene at the time of the murders.
All rise.
Last August, Kohberger's lawyers claimed in a court filing the suspected murderer was instead driving around alone, as he often did when the murders were committed in November of 2022. The judge requesting Kohberger's lawyers provide specific details like names and addresses about his alibi that could be corroborated. The new filing claims he was driving in the opposite direction of the King Road home to hike and run and or see the moon and stars. something he did on several occasions, and that his cell phone contained numerous photographs taken on several late evenings and early mornings, including in November, depicting the night sky. Authorities say Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were killed between 4 and 4:20 a.m. on November 13th in their off-campus home. Experts say that while cell phone records can estimate where a person is, it's difficult to pinpoint someone's exact location, especially in rural or remote areas.
I can tell you with scientific certainty from his cell phone records if he was connected to the Moscow cell tower or the Pullman cell tower, but I can't pinpoint him.
Authorities also say for a 2-hour period between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., Coberger's phone stopped reporting to the network entirely, which is consistent with the phone being out of service or in airplane mode.
Now, his lawyers say that he was an avid runner and hiker, and that because the school year got busy, those hikes turned into nighttime drives in the countryside. Now, Bryan Kohberger will be back in court next month for a change of venue hearing. Guys.
Okay, Kana, thanks. Dan Abrams is back. Is cell phone data strong?
It can be. It's used in a lot of cases now. But remember, prosecutors here also want to use cell phone data to show that he was at the home or near the home and that he'd been there multiple times before. But here's the difference. Prosecutors are linking up the phone with video of the car, which matched Bryan Kohberger. Now, we haven't even gotten to talk about the DNA evidence yet. But when you talk about even just those two pieces of evidence, cell phone in conjunction with surveillance video of what they believe is his car, together prosecutors believe they have a strong case. But as you can tell, when it comes to cell phone evidence, there can be different interpretations and different experts can make different assessments. And that's what it seems we're going to see here.
Can you think of another case where cell phone data was such a critical part?
Yeah. I mean, there are a number of cases I've seen where cell phone evidence becomes critical, but it tends to be supporting evidence, right? Because there's ambiguity around it, because there's a lack of certainty as to exactly where someone is. It's typically used to support a case and not to say, see, this proves the entirety of our case.
And how about that DNA evidence?
Look, and it's going to be critical, right? They're going to have to make another argument as to why his DNA was found on a sheath on the knife at the scene. And so they've got a challenge for them. The reason they're laying out the alibi now is because under Idaho law, they actually have to present the alibi defense at this point in the case. Under Idaho law, if you're going to say, I was somewhere else, you actually have to lay it out before the case starts. For some of the other pieces of the defense, we may learn that as the case moves on.
But if the DNA is there on that knife.
Look, there's a lot of evidence in this case. All right, let's be really clear. If the DNA is there, they're either going to say they're going to challenge the way the DNA was done. They may say it was planted. Who knows?
Okay.
All right. I think it's a lot simpler.
So I just want to grab this one comment here. Let's see. Tanel Ray, welcome. How are you doing? Nice to see you. Says, they said, talking about the cell phone, it was either off in airplane mode or out of service. Well, that is one of the things about the CAST technology and methodology and, group that is investigating this case and is generating reports, is they are actually able to tell if a phone is off in airplane mode or just out of service. Dun, 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 Big Brother's watching. So all we don't know at this time, they know definitively.
I think it's a whole lot of nothing, Kelly, man. It just, who gives a shit about any of this? Look, he said he took pictures of the night sky. He said he took pictures of the stars. So show me them with the metadata that shows that they were taken at the time you say you took them. I mean, it's not that hard. If you want to prove an alibi, you say you took pictures, give me the freaking pictures. If I was his attorney, I want to see the pictures. Where are they at? And then when he says, oh, I don't know, I must have deleted them, then you're full of shit. And you better start coming clean right now. I might have had that discussion with him. But this whole judicial conundrum, it's very simple. You got to disclose your alibi. We will give you full rights to amend your alibi statement when full discovery has been provided. I saw some other comments about there. So are you saying that the prosecution can withhold evidence? I don't think that's what they're doing. I think that they're disclosing it, but I think they're having a time producing what's being asked for. I don't think that they're trying to withhold it. I think the argument that's being presented back and forth is, They are supposed to submit their alibi affidavit a long time ago. There's deadlines. We're not submitting anything until they give us all the stuff. And I just think that the solution was produce the statement with what you have. And if you need to amend it in the future based on future discovery, then do it. What's the big deal? You're not prevented from doing that. And so it's simple. This whole alibi with the cell phone, you want to challenge it with your own experts, go for it. But you said you took pictures. I want to see the pictures. If I'm a juror, show me the pictures, because I feel like you get Neil deGrasse Tyson.
We need the metadata.
Yeah, just give me the metadata. Show me the position of the night sky. There's got to be a way to track that from like specific geological viewpoints, what the night sky looks here versus 10 miles away. And we could line it up and have an astrophysicist come in and explain, the shift and all that kind of thing. That would be one hell of a way to prove his alibi. If you can't do it, questions.
And if they didn't consider that, that may have been a huge oversight on their part. Because you can do that.
Yeah, 100% you could do that.
I wonder if they thought about that.
I'm sure they
thought about that.
I don't think I'm presenting like anything, some secret defense plan or anything.
No, but then I wonder why they said the night sky. I mean, that is a little bit crazy. Do you have just like 5 more minutes?
Oh yeah, I do. I got it.
Cool.
As much time as you need.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And welcome to everybody who's in chat. I see some people are saying hi, and Sub Rosa says, nice to see 2 of my favorites together. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, Sub Rosa. How are you doing? And let me just grab a couple other comments here. Welcome, guys. Nice to see you. Chanel Ray says, standing silent and out driving is all BK has said so far. LOL. I think that he is smart.
Smart AF.
Smart. I got it. Smartest. Got it. Okay. I'm like squinty. Let's see. Matt says, hi, Matt. How are you doing? Thanks for moderating. I appreciate you. He says, if your phone isn't pinging a network or tower, it doesn't mean it's off or in airplane mode. It could be a dead zone. Yeah. Experiencing network issues or possibly affected by a cell site stimulator. Yeah, that's true. A blocker, anything like that. Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things. Whatever those things are, the one thing I can tell you is the FBI CAS team is able to determine what state that phone was in, why it was not communicating with any tower at any given time. They're able to tell that because they're able to tell anything, and they're probably watching you right now.
Yeah, you can't hide anything anymore, man. Just assume you're being watched.
Yes. Yes.
Where you're at all times.
Don't do anything bad. This is Mama Kelly. Okay. So now I just want to just like here I want to have like a discussion about, okay, so this is the alibi, it's a bunch of like fluffernutter maybe, unless we're going to, do that whole thing that you just said with the, that's just crazy. I want that if they didn't think about that. And anyway, so why is this the alibi? Why is it important? What exactly is it that the defense is angling for by using this alibi? And I guess I say it like that because, y'all know probably if you've been watching this channel a while, I don't buy that alibi. I think that I have seen enough. And at this time, based on what I see, I have the opinion that Bryan Kohberger is most likely guilty. If the evidence shows otherwise, I will think otherwise because, that's what it's about, the facts and the evidence. But I'm not, going to pretend that has to be a theoretical discussion. But I think they chose that alibi. So why did they choose that alibi? That's my opinion. Let me know what your opinion is in the chat.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, they got a whole hell of a lot of evidence circumstantially to prove that he was there.
Yeah.
So if you're coming up with a defense for this guy, it has to fit what's already going to be indisputable. You're not going to be able to dispute a lot of what the prosecution is bringing to the table. The DNA being one of them, and I don't know if that's coming in or not, but it appears there to not be a reason for it not to come in. Even if you say that it's not, 99.99% accurate because of whatever, it's still a triable issue of fact that a jury needs to decide. It doesn't get to be removed because it's not 100% accurate.
Right.
Unless the judge deems it too prejudicial to let it in, which has never happened in a case like this involving the only DNA evidence that exists. And so you have to come up with something, and the only way to place him outside would be, oh, well, my phone was off because of the dead zone thing up in the mountains, which is the only possible plausible situation that could have occurred to make his cell phone be off at these specific times that it was off, in a reasonable way. They found a way, or Coberger found a way, because I don't believe that his defense is putting stuff in his ear saying, oh, this is the only thing we can do. I think that your commenter that Coberger is smart AF, maybe he is. And he's been sitting in a jail cell a long time. And he came up with, well, there's mountains over there. I went hiking there once or twice. And over there, my cell phone dies. And so maybe I was just driving around, contemplating life and looking at the stars and bird watching or whatever he does out there, going for a hike. I don't understand. He goes for a hike. And so therefore, as a substitute, he was driving around. It's not the same thing.
I know. But I just have to say, I don't think that that's necessarily smart AF. I think that's having a whole lot of time on your hands, and what better to do with a whole lot of time on your hands when you're facing the death penalty than trying to figure out some way to try to save your life if you are in fact guilty.
I guess
also known as smart AF, but
I know what I don't really understand is, look, I read all about this case when everything happened, when he was arrested, and in the coming months, you had all of this entire group of people hanging on to this idea that Coberger was not the guy, and just because he looks like he's guilty doesn't mean we should jump to conclusions. And it became like this borderline religion that I just don't understand. But when I look at the evidence, like, okay, so then he's not guilty. Why? And I'm giving it an objective look. And so what the alibi is, he was stargazing. Come on, man.
I know.
I'm not seeing it. You got to defeat the DNA for me. Defeat the DNA, defeat the cell phone stuff. Bring your experts in. Tell me, explain to me why all of these things were. And then, look, I'll give it a fair shake. I just don't see it right now. I don't see it. I don't understand what people are hanging on to, unless you're buying in to this fake surveillance stuff. We were hearing the weird screams at the times that purports to be real video, and it's actually not. It's like,
it's like a YouTuber trying to get views. That's what it always is. That's what it always is. What's it mean, Morris? I shouldn't even say it because so that's always what it is. Now, somebody who might know something about this more so than the rest of us, because this is a discussion that comes up a lot when talking about this case. What is the difference as far as you know? I mean, I understand you're not like I don't know, whatever kind of scientist it would be that studies this. What's the difference between touch DNA and DNA that's not touch DNA?
Well, touch DNA is just transferred DNA. Like you touch your cell phone and it leaves you grab someone's cell phone, leaves your DNA on it. Other DNA is just other DNA, like DNA that basically speaks for itself. Like you got a pool of blood laying there and you collect it. That's not touch DNA. That's just DNA that comes from biological matter. But when you sit in a car seat, when you touch a touch screen to order your food, when you give somebody a hug and touch their clothing, you leave trace DNA on those pieces of evidence. Touch DNA is always less reliable than regular biological DNA, and I'd imagine that's some of the arguments that the defense is going to try to make, because
it's transferable to some degree.
Yeah, it's like, oh well, touch DNA, he touched the sheath somewhere. Oh, when did he touch it? Okay, so then what about the factory workers? What am I going to find their touch DNA on there? Doesn't seem to exist. Whose touch DNA is most likely to be on the sheath? The person who touched it last. And so good luck with that argument, man. It doesn't make a lot of logical sense to me that they're going to discount the DNA because it's touch DNA of the sheath. To me, touch DNA is most relevant to identify the last person to touch a thing, as opposed to saying, oh, it's not that probable because you could touch anything. Yeah, but your mom's DNA is not on the sheath. And so what do you mean? What are you saying?
Right. And it's like all of these female roommates had boyfriends or boys in their life. And it's like, when they were looking for, DNA in the scene, they found, it was like three male DNA suspect samples. I'm mixing my words there. But so why didn't they find, Jax and the other Jax and the other, why didn't they find, every guy that we know has been in that house in the past?
Well, I'm sure that they did. I mean, I don't know the extent. I haven't seen the test themselves, but I'm sure that they did find all of their DNA in there somewhere, but they weren't looking for those pieces of DNA. They were looking for somebody else's DNA. And Coberger's
DNA that was on the something connected to the murder weapon.
Yeah, and that's what they found. It was unique in that he didn't live in the house and had no reason to be there. And he wasn't like one of the person that served them food in the food truck. He wasn't one of the bartenders. He wasn't one of. It was Kohberger's DNA for a reason. Why? There was a sheath left behind connected to a murder weapon. They're definitely dead. They were definitely murdered a very specific way, and you found his DNA on it. If you're going by touch DNA, stands to reason he's the last person to touch the sheath before the investigators got to it. That's the strength of the prosecution's evidence. That's what the defense has to overcome.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let me bring this into the stream here. Very well fed. And why is this the alibi? Oh, maybe it's because Bryan Kohberger is innocent and he just argues it. Or maybe it's because, well, let's find out why. Well, they got to bring in the stream. This is when I need Dominic. I need one of those. All right. Brian, what's this called? It's called Bryan Kohberger. See, I truly do need a Dominic. Okay.
Morning hours, he was out for an innocent joyride. Defense attorneys called their client an avid runner and hiker, claiming he often took drives in the countryside late at night and in the early morning hours to enjoy the moon and stars. The accused killer's filing says that once school started, his hiking decreased and his drives increased. His attorneys plan to present cell phone data and photos of the night sky that show he was in the countryside on several occasions. The defense says their client's cell phone was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. So they say the car captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman highway near Floyd's cannabis shop could not be his. Floyd's cannabis shop is off State Route 270, the main route into Moscow from Pullman, Washington. His alibi does not confirm or deny that other surveillance videos of the white Elantra in Moscow is him. Here's the state's timeline of the accused killer's movements, outlined in their probable cause affidavit. Prosecutors say his phone pings in Pullman, Washington at 2:42 a.m. at his Washington State University campus apartment. His phone is on the move at 2:44 a.m. A few minutes later, his cell phone stops pinging. Investigators say that could be because the accused killer turned it off. And for the next 2 hours, investigators track his alleged movements using only surveillance video of what they say is his white Elantra. The state alleges that the accused killer drove from the WSU campus to Moscow by way of State Route 270, a claim they support with surveillance of a white Elantra seen heading in the direction of the highway at 2:53 a.m. and a photo of the same car near Floyd's cannabis shop further down the highway. The accused killer claims that it was not him. Cameras caught a white Elantra traveling through Moscow, first on streets near the crime scene, then on the victim's street from 3:39 a.m. to 4:20 a.m. Police say the accused killer turned his phone back on at about 4:48 a.m. near Blaine, Idaho, a rural community in the countryside about 10 to 15 minutes south of Moscow. According to the prosecution, from 4:50 a.m. to 5:26 a.m., his phone travels south towards Genesee, Idaho, going west toward Uniontown, Washington, a route that could lead toward Hawaii Park. The accused killer claims that park was his favorite place and that in the early morning hours of November 13th, he drove there. His alibi does not say
It also happens to be an incredibly good place to dump evidence of a murder.
When he got home, but the state says at 5:30 a.m. his cell phone uses service in Pullman, Washington. According to prosecutors, that's when he got home, not after an innocent drive, but after committing a quadruple murder.
And as we look ahead to one of the most highly anticipated murder trials, the trial date set to begin in this case in early March of next year, March 3rd, 2025. For now, let's bring back in our think tank to talk about this case. We've been talking about it for months, turning into years now. Still with us, Eklund Mercy, Kirk Nurmi, and Nima Rahmani. Nima, this alibi.
Kurt Nurmi. Jodi Arias or Casey Anthony?
Wait, who are we talking about?
Kurt Nurmi.
Who was that? Is that
this guy down here with like the jacket? He used to be really heavy. Was it Casey Anthony or Jodi Arias? Kurt Nurmi.
That he represented as like their defense?
Yeah.
It couldn't have been Anthony.
Oh, right, because she had Jose Baez. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Jodi Arias. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for nostalgia's sake, let's hear what Kurt has to say. He's like
Right.
lost like two of himself.
If the Floyd's cannabis shop evidence that he was there, if that can be definitively debunked, does that equal reasonable doubt in this case?
I don't think so. There's plenty of evidence here. There's the single source DNA at the scene. There's apparently DMs with the victims that may show some sort of stalking, him actually showing up at their place of business. And even if the phone was turned off or an airplane mode and didn't hit the cell sites the night of the murder, it was there the very next day and plenty of times before the murder. So I think there's enough. We have a fuzzy eyewitness account as well. And look, these types of pretrial motions are normal. The defense has to provide some notice of their alibi defense. The judge is going to let it in because it would be so prejudicial not to. This is the defendant's only real defense in the case and what might keep him off death row. And as far as the other pretrial matters that were heard today, the genetic genealogy and the gag order, it's really all sort of par for the course. I know everyone's frustrated. It's taken a long time, but we know that these pretrial motions are to tee up these issues for appeal if and when Coberger is convicted and sentenced to death.
It can feel like it's taking a long time. And Kirk, we thought at one point it was going to be the summer of 2025. Now it's going to be spring or earlier, March 3rd, 2025. And you've got students who are going to have to take the stand. Students who are still in school, or if they're not in school, they're still going to have to travel back here to testify in probably the most horrific part of their life, their most horrific memory. Your thoughts on the timing of this trial?
You know, death penalty cases take a long time because they're going to be looked at 10 to 15 years down the road. If Mr. Coberger is sentenced to death, which I think is likely in this case, I agree with Nima in terms of the likelihood of conviction as well as a sentence of death, that's going to be looked at for 10 to 15 years down the road. And one of the things that they're going to be looking at is the effectiveness of the counsel he had at the trial level. That means the counsel, whether they believe their client, whether they believe Mr. Kohberger's alibi, that he was stargazing, what have you, because they really have no direct evidence to dispute it, they have to pursue all this cell phone data, all the DNA data with vigor because they have to move forward. They cannot just ignore what Mr. Kohberger says when it is his life at stake. So all these things have to be pursued, and that's what takes a long time, along with the mitigation case, right? Preparing that alongside of contesting guilt, you have to prepare for that mitigation case, which by its nature takes a long time.
Eklund, this stargazing alibi, do you think the defense went a little bit too far? I know the prosecution had demanded more specifics for their alibi, but they put specific places like that park, which the park on its website says that they close before dark and would not have let anyone in as far as a gate in that area. So if he's saying he was there in the wee hours of the morning, would make it pretty difficult. Do you think the defense may have given too much information that can then be debunked as well?
No, I think that they're trying to do the my cousin Vinny type of defense that, you know, it could be another Elantra. The issue is that they're really trying to force the prosecution's hand in proving their burden. And just the fact that he looks scary, and coupled with the fact that he was around that area, coupled with the fact that he just so happens to have a major in criminal defense, although it sounds like a slam dunk, isn't enough for the murders. So I think juries now are way more sophisticated. We're going to have to see, is there a room in his home that has all 4 students with little, with little connections to them? Is there like a doll of one of the victims? Do we have a safe, do we have storage that has like, pictures and love letters? They're really going to have to lock in. So it's not going to be as simple. I don't think that it's going to be that.
I can't. But what we do need to see, I'm sorry, but they
welcome back to Live Now from Fox, and we continue to follow breaking news.
They were saying crazy things. I couldn't stand the crazy things on top of the crazy things. But what we do need to see is a picture of Kurt Nurmi back in the day. What's that?
I'm all ready for that. No, I was gonna say, just watching that panel, gosh, doesn't that make you just want to hang out with a bunch of lawyers? I was so bored. I can't think of a single person on that panel that goes, oh yeah, let's definitely go grab a drink right now. You guys are a hoot.
No, definitely not that panel was like, no.
What are you trying to do with my cousin Vinny thing? Life of the party. Wow, Jesus Christ. He has lost some weight, hasn't he?
He lost a few of them. Kurt Nurmi. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about the man's goatee. I mean, he's like flaring out. I mean, I'm not one to talk. I'm just saying it looks a little questionable the way that he did it.
I don't know. That's our boy Kurt Nurmi. He was on, Jodi Arias' defense team. Yeah.
I swear to God, I thought that Arias' defense. Oh no, that was him. I do remember him now. I do remember him. I just had to go back into the recesses of my mind. My memories of that case was of the prosecutor cross-examining Arias.
Oh my God, he was like a little man on fire.
Oh, it was so beautiful to watch. Just watching him.
Good.
Take her down point for point, and then this effing guy sitting here like, man, hey, what do you want from me? I mean, oh, I do remember him now.
Kurt. So that's Kurt Nurmi. Oh my gosh. So let's see. I'm gonna grab a couple comments. Do you have anything to say about any of that craziness we watched?
No, I mean, I think I pretty much outlined it the way that that they were trying to outline it. I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of these lawyer panels. They all don't really, they say a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, that's why I had to just stop that. I was like, yeah, that's just blah, blah, blah. She's like, do they have a cabinet with voodoo dolls, or do they have a storage room with, voodoo dolls?
No, it really matters when you're a trial. Think about this, though. I will say this, that when it comes to doing these trials, you have to have some form or level of charisma, because the jury has to like you, because they're not going to receive the information that you have for them. They will. It's just going to be hard for them if you're off-putting. And so the arts of being a trial attorney, it just goes so far beyond the academic aspect of it. You have to be able to relate to people, and none of those panelists would be anybody that I want to go have a beer with at the end of the day.
Oh my God, no, hell no. Oh my God. They were terrible. I want to read this. I started a couple of comments. I can't remember why I wanted to read this, but I had a question. Oh, I know. I wanted to. Okay. So Matt says, fact, Moscow Police Department was in the area during the murders. The family files a tort claim, and suddenly there's an arrest. Makes you wonder if a stingray was involved, where murders occurred right under their noses. Oh my gosh, I really need to my eyes are starting, my contacts then. What's up with, so the family Goncalves filed that it was like a tort something or other, but wasn't that just to reserve basically their right in the future, should the right circumstances come about, where they could still then file a tort actual claim? Wasn't like a placeholder filing kind of? I don't know what the technical term is for it.
Well, they didn't actually go forward with their tort claim yet, have they? No, they got their arrest. I don't see that connected.
No.
It's logical to me that they were tracking Coberger for some time, and they were purposefully not. I remember at the time, purposefully not releasing any information, but it turns out they had a cavalcade of information that they just hadn't disclosed. They put it all in their probable cause affidavit, but at the time, everybody was looking at like the hoodie guy and all these other people they saw in surveillance footage that was going on TikTok. There was like a psychic if I remember, they was talking about professors. One of the professors was guilty. Nobody knew anything.
Oh yeah, no. Well, that was a TikToker, and that TikToker had a big fat lawsuit slapped on her.
Yeah, she got a defamation lawsuit by that. But yeah, I don't think that it's related that, if they filed a tort claim and so they arrested somebody. No, man, they had evidence against the guy. It's one thing if they didn't have a case, but it appears that they do. And so I don't think that they're related, even if it's coincidental.
Yeah, I agree with that. Tanel Ray, let's see if I can read this one. Okay. The police had a theory and lacked any confirmed information. It happens. I don't know about the other cases, but this one is a dumpster fire.
Well, it's oftentimes the case that you don't have perfect information when an arrest is made. And the whole point of the criminal justice system is to find a suspect. That's why they call it a probable cause affidavit. Based on all of the information we have, it's more probable than not that Bryan Kohberger is the effing guy. Until we complete our investigation, we don't know for sure, but it's going to get due process. We're going to look at all the evidence and figure out all the other avenues that this could have gone. And we've had, since, going on, it's going to be a couple of years now. If they're really going to do it in March of 25, the incident was in 22. And so,
that actually has been changed. It's now slated to start in, I believe, June of 2025. It's definitely next summer.
Oh, so it's going to be, they will have had a good full 3 years just about to put together a case that goes both ways.
38 months, I think it is, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, man, every case that I've ever done, the evidence always changes. Every criminal case I've ever had, whether I was working for the prosecution or whether I was defending my clients, the evidence always changes. And you know what? The attorneys don't always know how the evidence is going to come out at trial. You saw Karen Reed. They had their theories, and then those theories literally changed on the fly as witnesses say stupid things on the stand. And so you have ideas of what happened. Nobody ever knows for sure. You're never just going to have the smoking gun evidence. Very few times will you have smoking guns. And when you do, those cases never go to trial. And so the whole reason for this process is you have to expect, of course, they don't have perfect evidence. They got a really strong sneaking suspicion that Coberger was the guy, and it's based on all of those things. If you want to prove he's not the guy, we've had 3 years to bring us any evidence suggesting it was anyone else, and that's the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that. Now, RJ asks, so why didn't his family hire an attorney for BK? His attorney is court appointed, if I'm not mistaken. Go ahead and field that one.
It's really hard to hire a private attorney to take on a death penalty case. You know how much that would cost? You're probably looking at 7 figures.
Yeah, 7 figures. Yeah.
You're looking at $1 million retainer.
Yeah.
You're asking an attorney to take on this one case for years.
Yeah, look, it's not even starting for 3 years, and then there's a trial. Yeah, my gosh, yeah.
You're gonna hire a guy like me, bro. I got 80 other cases on my docket right now that are currently open that I'm representing folks at the same time. You want me to take on your death penalty case? The only competent way I'm gonna be able to do that is to let go of my practice and go take on this case full time. It's the only way this is gonna work out. That's $1 million retainer, especially if I know that we're a couple of years away from trial. This trial's not starting until 2025. So even when they were selecting the death penalty representation for this case, it took a while to find who they found because nobody had the requisite experience, and they had to hand select this person who's done an amazing job on the case. I could tell you this: there are a few attorneys that will have done a better job than what's her name? Marjorie Taylor.
Ann Taylor.
She looks like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Has done a spectacular job on defense. You'd be hard pressed to find a better defense attorney than her. Don't be fooled by the fact that she's state appointed. State appointed doesn't mean you have a shitty attorney. It means you have a state appointed attorney. And I guarantee you that she's more equipped and experienced and ready to take on this case than most anybody else you could throw into the handful of attorneys that would be even experienced enough to even attempt it.
Right, because they have to be death penalty qualified or certified, right? So Sub Rosa says, Bryan is indigent. That means he's broke. I got no idea what all these women see in his broke ass.
I don't know about what women see in him otherwise, but if that's a thing, then good for him, I guess.
Yeah, right. Tanel Ray says, AT has a great history of dealing with high-profile cases. I do think he lucked out getting her. If not, surely his family would sell their home to hire a better lawyer. But I mean, the family, we know the family history. They've declared bankruptcy a couple times. We know that. The father works, as a facilities person in a school. The mother is a paraprofessional in a school. They're getting a little older. I mean, they couldn't take out 2 mortgages on their house, sell all their cars, and, starve their pets and be able to pay for that. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's most families are not going to do that.
Yeah.
Unless they already have the means. They're not doing that. They're not putting up, especially imagine you had a son that committed an act like that. You're going to throw away your entire life in the hopes that you might get an attorney to you'd have to wrestle with your own thoughts. Did my son really do this?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because if he did, are you trying to just get him exonerated just because of your son? A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of real conversations with people that are family members of people that are charged with serious crimes. And when I tell them what the retainer is to defend them for those serious crimes, like, cousin Chewy, I get, you know what? He's going to have to roll with the public defender then.
Right. I know. Yeah, right. I mean, and for a lot of people, it's not even, certainly not a choice. It's like, you just simply can't. And that's why we have public defenders.
Yeah.
So yeah.
On average, they're really good. I'll tell you where they're bad. They're really bad on like the lower level cases. But generally for like these high profile cases, they're all right. They're fine.
That's cool. Let's see. RJ says, and didn't his siblings get fired from their jobs after he was arrested? One of his sisters apparently got fired from her job. She worked in the mental health field, and apparently, from what I've heard, and this of course would be a confidential record. I haven't seen her employment records. I don't think anyone has. That she did get fired from the job. Do you know anything about that?
I know nothing about his family or what's happened to them.
Yeah.
Nor have I really been all that interested in it.
Yeah. Yeah. How many falsely accused can't afford a proper defense? Well, again, that's why we have, public defenders, and that's why we hope, that there are some good ones in the bunch, right? So
yeah, I mean, there are. I'll tell you what, some of the best attorneys that I've ever think about public defenders like this. How are they any different than prosecutors? They're both employed by the county.
That's right.
They both have hundreds of trials every single year. They both are accumulating that same evidence. The only difference is prosecutors generally are given winning cases. It's really hard to defend a client that is guilty. And people make 97% success rate for that's because most of those cases end in pleas because it's obvious that they're guilty. And so people shit on public defenders all the time. I'm here to tell you that they are no less in skill than some of these seasoned prosecutors that you see all the time. And I would argue that they're even better than the prosecutors. Most of the prosecutors that I see, think of the Karen Reed case, they're boring, they're uninspired, they lack creativity because they're used to winning. When they go up against a competent defense attorney that's able to proffer a creative defense, they fall short because they just don't have that same muscle that defense attorneys do. I would argue that public defenders are better attorneys. I don't want to say better, but more creative attorneys than prosecutors.
Yeah. And I think that's a great statement. Now, if you guys have questions for Omar, just a few minutes left here. We're almost going on 2 hours. Just put them in caps. Just scream them out so he can hear them and answer the questions. Because I've
been all caps.
just be chat rude and scream at us. Put them in caps. Bring out those questions. Oops. My heart broke watching this. Prayers for BK's family and the victims' families. Absolutely. I mean, all of them are innocent and they are suffering in their own way for sure. And if you read Howard Blum's new, don't bother taking time to read it, book, the whole first chapter is about Bryan Kohberger's father's perspective. And according to him, and I don't know how many times, at least this time he cited his sources, but he said, according to, a family member told a friend, allegedly, it was a friend of a family member every time who was a cited source. But he said that from the friend of a family member of the Cobergers that Bryan Kohberger's father was afraid of him, and driving home he was afraid of him, and he says that he had an indication all along that Bryan Kohberger was the person who committed this atrocity.
I did not know that, or know of that book, or know of that narrative.
It may or may not be. It just came out like maybe 2 weeks ago, but it may or may not be true. He's a little. So Sub Rosa says, Omar, would you defend Suitcase Sarah Boone?
I gave her her little advert for attorney a good hard look. I examined the case. I examined her case. I listened to her argue with the judge in court. I considered, hey, I'll be on national TV. I'll be in the news. And then I heard her speak. And then I was like, nah, no effing way. Me and that lady would not get along. I would quickly be dismissed. I imagine I'd probably have a motion to withdraw pretty quickly. And like, nope, you volunteered, dipshit. You're in it now. And there's no chance. No chance.
No chance. No. Yeah, that would take a special kind of person.
Yeah.
Gregory Worth. And hi, Gregory. How are you doing? I was going to ask the same question. I'm so glad you asked it. Omar, do you think it was a mistake for the Idaho house to be demolished?
No, because I heard that it was haunted and stuff. And, I'd imagine that it was causing, I don't know, man. Do I think it was a mistake? How are you going to use the house at trial? I mean, you would use it to get a lay of the land. You would use it to have the jurors come in and do a walkthrough and get a feel for, how the killer might have entered the house, where he might have exited. It's widely known that in the affidavit that he entered through that kitchen big glass window. I imagine that there's been, I've seen 3D models of that place all over the place, all over YouTube, on the internet. I don't know if it was a mistake or not. I can't say, well, I don't know if it was a mistake. Maybe it was. I'm not sure what more evidence they could have pulled from the place, unless they were planning on having the jury do a walkthrough. That would be really the only utility for it.
Yeah.
And I've seen cases. The most recent one I could think of is the Murdaugh case, when they all went down to the ranch and did a walkthrough of like the shed where they had the animals, where the shooting took place, and it gave the jurors some perspective. But in all of their accounts, that they had their mind made up. It just kind of further solidified what they already thought. And so I'm not sure what utility it would serve. So I can't really call it a mistake. But yeah, I guess it would be nice if you're the prosecutor to have the jurors do a walkthrough, if only to feel, they say that when you go through these murder scenes, it has like an energy to it. I don't know how much you subscribe to the paranormal, but I promise you that the jurors would have felt the spirits of the victims, whether or not that's what they were feeling or not. They would have claimed I felt the heaviness in the room, and I felt the screams, and I felt the fear, and just the fact that they would have felt that, I would have thought would have been more beneficial to the prosecution. But I don't even know whose call it was for the house to be demolished. So there's that.
Yeah. I think, I personally felt I didn't want to see it be demolished. And I think, I believe that, Dylan had her perspective. She witnessed what she saw from inside the house. And I also believe, based on information that I've discussed with the two student sources that I've been talking to since this happened, it was like 2 weeks after it happened. I've talked about it a lot on this channel, but I believe that Bethany Funk did witness something out of her window. And so for her, it was like the perspective of looking out of her window, and it was this person coming around the side of the house and then kind of cutting across like where her window was, because she was on the first floor there. And then, well, I don't know, I think it might be mirroring you. And then he was kind of like hooked over towards that like Queen Road, like cul-de-sac area, but not up to where he'd be parking behind the house like everybody thinks. I do not think that the perpetrator parked behind the house for this reason. And I too totally believe that happened, and that Bethany and Dylan were communicating with one another, and they were scared, but in their, kind of human, natural tendency to want to talk each other down. They compared notes, and they decided that what Dylan saw on the inside matched the description of what Bethany saw on the outside, the same description of a person walking on the outside of the house and then kind of heading in a certain direction. And like, so for reasons like that, I think having the house standing so you could understand, you know, that perspective of that witness would be very beneficial. They also talk about, you know, the perpetrator sitting in certain places, you know, when, you know, we saw the car do 1, 2, 3 passes or whatever it was, and observing the house and being able to see, you know, where the perpetrator was sitting in the car and, you know, what they could observe in the house from that perspective. I also think that that could be very advantageous. I mean, like highly advantageous to the point where I think that the house should still be there. Just my opinion.
Well, if you have a theory of the case, prosecution is going to give a theory of the case, and they're going to give it. And if walking through that house, it doesn't make sense, their theory doesn't make sense, it could only help the defense in that regard. I got to imagine if people are going to find Coberger guilty, they're going to have that opinion regardless of whether or not they do a walkthrough. The only thing the walkthrough would serve to do is to throw doubt into the prosecution's theory of the case if it doesn't look physically possible for certain theories to hold. And so I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I'm not sure how much difference it makes. I got to imagine that somebody's going to throw up a 3D rendering of the place and do a walkthrough during the trial.
Yeah, sure.
And I think it'll be allowed because the houses no longer existed. So if that's needed, they'll do that. And they're going to have to agree on the dimensions and the animations and all like that kind of stuff. But
that's why the FBI went back in and they did all those laser, what's it called? Like those laser measurements, like before the house was raised. Yeah.
That makes sense. Probably, maybe specifically for that purpose.
Yeah, I think it was. So, all right. Well, oh wait, let's see. Oh no, that's just Kes Chick saying everybody be nice in chat. So, all right. So we're going on almost 2 hours here, and my eyesight is failing me. But thank you so much for coming on, Omar. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate getting your clarification on some of these things and your perspective on some of these things. I can finally let go my yikes moment in that hearing now when Ann Taylor said, no, it wasn't Brian's car, because I really thought that she slipped. And, but I guess maybe she didn't. Darn it. But no, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Well, it was my pleasure, Kaylee. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
And I also saw, I just want to mention this morning, I was actually working on a Micah Miller video and I saw that you were doing a live and I meant to go to it, but then just, time goes by and you're like, oh, it's come and gone. Yeah. Are you going to be talking more about that case?
Well, I talked about it because he went and did an interview with News Nation and just came off completely unhinged.
That was the video that I was making. Yeah. That I put. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had a lot of thoughts about that. I had a lot of thoughts about people purporting with their AI theories about the 911 call, which I haven't seen any supporting evidence for that, man. I'm just not beholden to the, I don't think it matters about the AI. There's one competing theory about maybe if she didn't unalive herself, it was somebody followed her with a tracker that was already on her car and then, forced her to unalive herself and then left. But I don't know. I think that you have to just be prepared to conclude that the way Micah Miller went was the way that law enforcement has concluded. Absent any other evidence, I don't see that. I heard that his attorneys are threatening everybody with defamation lawsuits. I had some choice sound bites for him and his attorneys on that regard. But yeah, man, I think that JP Miller is a creep.
Oh my God.
I think that if he's not guilty of unaliving somebody or driving her to that, he was guilty of being an abusive husband. I think there's plenty of evidence to corroborate
Absolutely was, my God.
He put Micah Miller into some kind of a hell that I couldn't even imagine being a part of, grooming her from a very young age, at the age of 14, to
so gross.
Have you read her list, Micah's list?
Micah's, my God. Yeah. Then the things he did to her, horrific.
And then the way that he presents it in his interview just was infuriating. And I just kind of excoriate him in my live this morning.
That was the video I made. It was like, ended up being like almost an hour and a half long video because I had so much to say about it.
Yeah. I think I spent 2.5 hours on that video, I think.
Wow.
And so, but yeah, it was just a verbal takedown of Miller and all the bullshit that he was putting out there.
And
went
something I
around a
thought
lot.
that you were going to be covering, because it was just the timing. I had just gotten done making that video. I barely got any sleep making that video. And just as I was getting done with it, I saw that your live stream was coming up soon. Oh yeah, I think I was taking a nap at the time. And also there's something new apparently that came out, and it's a video, an audio recording of JP talking to some young man from the church.
Yeah.
Who, did you hear that?
I played it on my live where he was confronting him about making out with his well, they were separated at the time.
Yeah.
And then he's just going on like this delusional rant. And then I was asking Dominic, hey, Dominic, how quickly, within how many seconds would you just slap the shit out of JP Miller for confronting him like that? Because it was on the phone, but I was going into like he's using his position of influence in the church to talk down to this young kid.
He was so scared. You could hear he was like shaking in his voice.
Yeah, and it had nothing to do like he was physically afraid of JP. I just felt like this guy's like his employer basically, because JP goes on to fire him and publicly announce it with like a chuckle and a laugh. And like, what religious person, what Christian person would go to this church and be under the stewardship of this effing guy? I mean, he's just so disgusting on so many levels. He's not a good guy. He might not be guilty of murder, but he's guilty of a lot of other things. What those things are is up to everyone else to decide. But yeah, we did. We went over that, and I tied it in like it goes to motive because it was weeks before Michael lost her life.
That's right. That's right. Just like when he was, apparently having an affair with Susie Skinner, and then her husband, ends up, drowning in the pool, and then just so many yikes. He's a dangerous man. So anyway,
I think the one thing I missed was when he lied about being on illegal narcotics.
Mm-hmm.
But there's plenty of meat on the bone for that interview to dissect for sure.
Well, the family and the family's attorney did a follow-up interview. I don't know if you saw that, but that's one point they refuted, and the attorney was like, "Oh, I'm so glad he did that. There's going to be plenty there to use in the civil suit." So,
yeah, for sure.
Here's your rope. Hang yourself.
And he did.
He sure did. Oh my God. He's just such a creep. I counted the number of times he touched his nose. I got 51.
He touches I heard about that. Did you see
that?
I was noticing touching his nose. But some people have also accused me of touching my nose. I do this a lot, but it's like a nervous tick. It's not because I'm like on the funny stuff or whatever.
No, I didn't even know if it was like I was thinking that maybe the funny stuff, or I think opiates make you itch. But then also from like a behavioral analysis perspective, body language perspective, and it's not always 100% accurate, but there are certain indicators of just trying to, you're being deceptive, you're being evil, you're just being a jackass. And you kind of like, I don't, that's kind of how I took it. So I don't know. I'd have to
he had a stress ball that he was squeezing the entire interview.
Yeah.
He starts off the interview and like the first things out of his mouth was like, so why are you coming forward now? And then he's like, well, I finally got approval from my attorneys. They said that if you're going to win it's easier to win a defamation case if you get people talking about you. So he's literally stating that he's coming to give this interview to have people talk about him so they can prep these defamation lawsuits. And then I had a soundbite that I played on my stream that I don't want to play on yours because it's a respectful show. Not that mine is not. It's just,
Was it of his? Oh, that you said?
Well, there's curse words in it, and so I don't want it to, I'll play it if you want me to.
Yeah, no, play it.
Okay, I will not. Oh, you want me to? Oh,
yes.
So he
curse
gave that
warning. Curse warning.
He threatened with defamation, and to that I said,
"Suck my dick, you nerdy."
Wait, play that again. Wait.
Suck my dick, you nerdy, geeky virgin bitch.
That was my message to Miller and his attorneys.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Yeah, he's evil. It's terrible. And it like the root of it all, I always like I don't know, I guess it's just how I am, but sometimes it feels like a problem. Sometimes it's a good thing. I don't know. But I feel sorry for him too, but then I make that go away because I think of all the evil things he did and what a beautiful, sweet, wonderful soul Micah was and what he did to her. It's horrible. I mean, she was just precious, you could tell, and but I see this just, injured child at the core of him. Like you can see it come through. He just has this like injured child that is constantly acting out. But now, the thing is, he's an adult. So like all the rest of us adults, it's his responsibility to behave responsibly and appropriately and respectfully in the world around him and with other people. And he fails to do that. So I see that child, but I have to tell that child to grow the fuck up and like not feel too sorry for him. Do you see
he's
that?
in his 40s now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no empathy for him. I just don't care. He's a rotten human being. If he's unwilling to treat those around him with respect and grace, then why should I extend the same grace to him?
Yeah. Oh, gross. It's just all so disgusting. Oh, well, anyway, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to do something soon again. And I am going to have to reel you back in for another watch stream because there are some specific things that have come up that I do need to ask you about, and it's critical.
I think I got an idea of what you wanted to ask. I was thinking about doing a video, I think, on probably the very topic that you want to talk about.
What's that?
About how I think that Watts might be ready to turn on Kessinger.
Oh, well, that's not even what it was. I am currently on a warpath for Michael J. Rourke's head. And I have some questions about some of the things that he did prosecutorially.
Oh, well, that's different. I'd be ready.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in that one for sure.
Yeah. And Watts may be turning Kessinger. I mean, I know a lot of people today and yesterday or so, I don't know how many text messages and emails, and thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it so much. But, this story about this, the jail, not mate, but next door neighbor came out and said, oh, he's blaming Cole Kessinger. Guys, that's old news. It's old news. It's just that Lawn Crime or whatever picked it up right now. But
that's true. That is true.
Yeah. But I mean,
100% right on that.
Yeah, he could turn on her, I don't know. But
there's the other angle with like somebody from Law and Crime also went on there and said that Chris Watts is the worst form of narcissist. He's willing to keep on. Some people, when they're sitting there in prison, are willing to accept some blame at some point. He just keeps on projecting outward.
I saw that.
Yeah, and which I frankly agreed with. And so I don't know, man. It was interesting to discuss. Is he really going to just try to pin it all on her all of a sudden? Because maybe the thing is, I haven't told you the whole story about Kessinger, but wait till you get a load of this. And then years after the fact, he tries to implicate her. Is it going to go anywhere? Yeah, I don't think it is. But
well, I mean, I think one of the problems that could be had there, I don't know, but one of the problems that could be had is, goes back to my boy, the Honorable Michael J. Rourke. When he accepted Chris Watts' plea deal, it was under, no conditions. He accepted it basically free and clear. He did not make him, come forth with a motive, with details, with anything. In fact, until they went back and interviewed Chris Watts when he was already in prison 3 months later, they were shocked because they had the whole scenario wrong of how those precious lives ended. And I just don't know how the prosecutor allowed that to happen. How do you accept a plea deal without corroborating the really wishy-washy confession, sort of, and then not putting any, conditions on that plea deal? Like, yeah, freaking cough it up. Sit down, young man, and just, kind of like, I don't know, prisoner of war torture until you tell us the truth.
Yeah, I mean, you sometimes in law enforcement, you have a tendency to jump to conclusions. And, you got the guy you're looking for. We got him. He's confessed. Wrap it up. There's no need to drag this out. And then it's like, oh, shit, I should have looked deeper into all of these other things. And that's always going to be the frustration whenever anybody talks about the Watts case.
Well, but they were not analyzing evidence that they had collected well before that plea deal. And we're talking as of like September 4th, but this is a whole new thing. I could talk about it.
I know he can.
So we'll have you back on for that.
For sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And yeah, so everybody, my gosh, I know that the moderators have been posting your channel link in chat all along, and I'll put in the description. But definitely, if you are not subscribed to Omar yet, you should go subscribe to his channel. He has a variety of your channel just keeps getting more interesting, diverse, growing.
Well, we're working on it. So
Yeah.
we're trying to keep it diverse.
It looks good. Yeah, everything, it looks good, sounds good. So
I
yeah,
really
so
appreciate you.
go check out Omar, or else you're going to be the next person I'm going to have to be after, along with Michael J. Rourke. No, just kidding. It's only him right now. It's just him and Kessinger. They make a good pair.
Oh, I don't no comment on that one.
Oh,
I've heard some
anyway,
things about Kessinger.
got to scrub Watts out of my mind so I can sleep sometimes. I'm going to work on that.
All right, Kelly. I got to get going, man.
All right. Yeah.
You
Thank
have
you
a
so
lovely
much. I
weekend.
appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Omar.
Goodbye, everybody. I appreciate you all.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
Take care. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate all you guys. And he's great guest, right? I just love having him on. That's so awesome. And, you know, and a lot of people are saying, if I meant to tell him, I'm sure he can read it himself. A lot of people are saying, thank you, Omar, for coming on. They really appreciate you. And yeah. Let's see. When you finally see the truth, you'll be a good warrior. Huh? I'm lost in your chat in here, but I'm going to try to read a couple. Yes, Abrosa, I was thinking that as well. Yeah. Oh. RJ is going to another case. Says, I remember being at my parents' home when Mallory Beach boat accident. Not going to say more on that because not the subject. Her death broke that case up. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah. He covered that pretty thoroughly, too. Yeah. So sad. Okay. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate all of you guys so much. So listen, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out the Micah Miller video I put out earlier. We did a really deep analysis of it. I think that you'll like it. And also, finally, my part 2 video of Kessinger, what do they call it? Nicole Kessinger was more involved than you know, or something like that. And you're going to watch it and you're like, oh my God, yes. Featuring Nicole Kessinger and Michael J. Rourke. It's a part 2. I put the first video out. I don't know. It was like a few weeks ago, and I was supposed to put the part 2 out right after. But then I was advised that some of it was a little might give the channel or myself a little too much exposure. So then I had to edit it, and it kind of took the hook away from the video. So I had to sort of, I don't know, rethink it. But anyway, it should be coming out tomorrow. So be ready for that. Check it out, watch it, and let me know what you think. And I might be doing another live stream either tomorrow night or Wednesday night. It's going to be a Watts live stream because there's some stuff to talk about. And I just want to set everyone straight now that's buzzing like, oh, all this news. It's not news. But there are some things that are news, so we're going to talk about what those are. Hey, Anaphylaxis, you just came out of nowhere. How are you doing? Thank you so much, moderators. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, awesome. Thanks, Gregory. I'm so glad you saw it. See, Gregory Worth says, good night, watch the obsession. Love the Micah Miller video. Awesome. Thank you for watching. Yeah, everybody go watch it. I worked my butt off on that, and there's not a lot of views. I hate when that happens. It's not all about the views, but when you work like so hard, put so many hours into something, you're just like, oh, no one watched it. That's okay, though. You know, I appreciate every time you do. Anaphylaxis, you're becoming a lurker. I hope you're doing well. Yes. I will because I will text you. I've just been working on videos all day. It's like kind of, yeah. I just realized how little work I've been doing on the channel over the past couple weeks. So it's getting to the end of the month, so I want to just get some stuff completed. Glad you were here. Sub Rosa, don't pick fight. You know I love you. Skated this morning. Oh, nice. Awesome. Thanks, Nell Ray. Thank you. You watched it? Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. So I'm going to go. It's so hard to say goodbye to you guys. But remember, life is hard for all of us at times. Life's been a little hard for me recently. I don't think I usually feel like my life is hard, but it has. And so there are times when I just really don't want somebody to be nasty to me. So please just remember, life is hard for everybody. Please be nice to one another, and especially be nice to yourself because you deserve it. I know you deserve it. You do. You do. So be nice to yourself above all. And then people in chat. Aw, thank you, dear. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sirius Black. It's great to see you. I always love seeing you. See, I know I'm just like, oh, I just want to keep chatting with you guys. No, I got to go though, because I've got to go to bed. I am tired. All right, so either tomorrow night or Sunday night, there's going to be another live stream. Check out that video tomorrow. And until then, do something awesome for yourself. And again, check out The Tilted Lawyer. We thank Omar. He was a really great guest, and I hope he comes back soon. Always love hearing what he has to say. Thank God he's a lawyer. I mean, yeah, we need one of those, right? Yeah, as a consultant. So, all right, guys, take care.